I was a storm that wouldn't rest, a tangled heart inside my chest. The mirror cracked with every glare, but I found hope out in the air. Sensitive stability taught me how to stand with shaking knees and open hands. Through the chaos I found my way, rebuilding life step by step each day.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to the Sensitive Stability BPD live show. For those of you who don't know me, I am your host. My name is Kevin Reynolds. I am a BPD survivor and a BPD coach. We go live here on TikTok Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. US EST under usual circumstances, where we talk about a different topic related to borderline personality disorder. It's been a few days. We've had to take off a bunch of different personal matters going on. The only time to do them. So my apologies for those of you who have been relying on the show. We do try to show up whenever we can. But that said, this morning's topic, and just to get us going here, is getting frozen, getting stuck. The frozen that I'm talking about that keeps us trapped in the condition, that keeps us from getting better. And it comes in many forms. It comes in many fashions. For some of us, we run from the problem, right? Good morning, Jem. Thank you. Appreciate you guys. For some of us, we will isolate. We'll hear stuff we don't like, and we will restrict ourselves to a particular corner of the world. It might be a closet, it might be a room, might be, the house in the countryside. Thanks, Nicole. But other times we'll run, and I've done both of these things. Other times we'll create excuses. Thank you, Pasha. Thank you, Red. I did a lot of excuse making, whole lot of excuse making. I like that one. And the excuses that keep you from seeing multiple perspectives are the ones that I'm talking about here when I say frozen. Okay. If you are unwilling to hear, good job, someone's perspective on something, if you are unwilling to take in another point of view, if you are unable to hear someone else's opinion, I would say that is in the state of frozen. We should be able to listen to the outside world, even if we disagree with them. We should be able to listen to other people's opinions, they sound even if they sound threatening to us. Otherwise, we won't ever have the full perspective of the chessboard, if you will. And for those of you with questions, I'll try and get to them soon. Usually we try to relay some of the lesson plan in the first 5 to 10 minutes or so at least. And that said, there were many points in my life when I ran from the idea of getting better because it meant that I would have to go through something uncomfortable. You see what I mean? And that discomfort that you feel is exactly why it's worth exploring. Because the simple idea of doing things differently should not be so overwhelming to you that you can't even explore it in your own mind. You see what I mean? Now, for those of you who are new here, I coach for this condition, so I walk people through some of these fears, but it becomes very obvious to me where the problems are when there are areas that are scary to talk about, right? So we start heading down this road or that road, and we realize that there's fears in the way of even being able to hear this information, of even being able to walk through what it would mean to look at life a little differently. Those uncomfortable things that we're running from are the exact things that are keeping us trapped where we are. And it doesn't, hearing some other perspective or being able to look through your excuses. Thank you, Tara. Doesn't necessarily mean you actually have to do anything different right now. And I think that's a big distinguishment that we have to make here. Exploring ideas does not mean that you have to immediately change your behavior or your actions. But you should have the perspective of the more data, the more information I get and that I have, and I can analyze, the more likely I am to get what I want, the more likely I am to be rewarded, the more likely I am to see a good life. Without that extra information, I am operating at a reduced capacity. And then we ask ourselves things like, why, Manky Michelle, why am I suffering and everyone else isn't? Why me? Why is this happening to me? Right? Well, part of the reason is because we restrict our mind from collecting all of the data. And when you don't take in all of the data, how could you ever expect to have the best decision making process? Right? Look at it from let's say you're going to build a new building or a house, right? Who's going to have a better time building a house? The guy that takes time to analyze the land, contact the city, see if there's anything that they need to avoid digging into, all of that kind of stuff, or the person that just says, I'm just going to build it the way I see it in my head and it'll go the way it goes, right? Well, the person that takes the time to plan, thank you, Vitality, good to see you, that person's going to have a stronger house. That person's going to have a better outcome. And this is no different in any walk of life. Your relationship is suffering. Have you taken the time to fully analyze your partner's perspective? And I know what you're thinking. If you're at a certain point in the awareness level, thanks, Amanda, you might be saying, well, that's unfair. They never think about my perspective. Well, it is unfair if they're not thinking about your perspective, but it doesn't alleviate you from needing to look at everyone's perspective to make the best decision for you. And I would encourage you and challenge you to worry less about what other people are not doing. Thank you, Kim. And worry more about what you could be doing. This is called accountability. What could I improve? What could I do better? I'm going to stop worrying so much about what everybody else isn't giving me, what everybody else isn't contributing, who isn't reciprocating. Thanks, Kim. If it's truly bad, you will have self-respect enough to walk away from that or lay a boundary down and enforce it if you respect yourself, right? But we have to get to a place where we respect ourselves. So that said, I'm not sure if Amit will be able to make it this morning, who's usually our moderator. So I will kind of turn to the chat a little bit and try to answer some of these questions as we go. And for those of you just joining, I appreciate you. I've had to take a few days off for some stuff going on my end. It's unavoidable. Tomorrow's another one of those days. I can only hit today, Thursday, and Friday this week, and then we should be back on track as normal Monday through Friday next week. But I appreciate your patience for sure. I think we had one in the beginning. Kit Kat had asked, how do you recommend going about trying to get a diagnosis for BPD? I had a very hard time with that. A lot of therapists and mental health professionals didn't want to diagnose anything, really, it seemed. A lot of them weren't familiar with BPD enough to diagnose it. And I chased the diagnosis for a long time. Eventually, I got it, but it didn't help me any to get the diagnosis, you see, because if anything, it kind of hurt a little bit. I got denied life insurance because the diagnosis was then on my record. And most mental health professionals refuse to work with me because I have BPD. The ones that specialize in it still weren't able to help me. At least that was my experience. And there is no medication for it. So really the only point of the diagnosis is to land you in front of some place that might help, some place like this. So I'm glad that you relate to the condition enough to have found me. But other than that, I mean, I always suggest putting the time and energy into the behavioral changes necessary rather than, trying to find the diagnosis, right? I'm glad to be back. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. Really nice to see the love. Emmy says, could you give me tips on how to regulate my emotions better? I'm really struggling with that. The emotional dysregulation is one of the heaviest features of BPD. And this is greater than tips. One of the reasons that a lot of the treatment protocols out there didn't work for me and that I don't see them working for many of us is because they are skill based, meaning they're trying to teach you tips and tricks in order to keep it together. But as you can tell, these tips and tricks don't often work very well, right? Perspective changes are required in order to beat this condition and improve. And one of the biggest perspective changes is accepting the idea that you have outsourced how you're supposed to feel about yourself into the outside world. Well, of course, you're always going to be emotionally dysregulated in that circumstance because the outside world can't always help you feel good. There's going to be days when your partner doesn't like you. There's going to be days when your best friend might even hate you. There's going to be people that don't want anything to do with you anymore, jobs that fire you. There's going to be people that, grow in different directions. And we have to accept those realities. But instead, we'll use them as measurements of ourselves. Oh, if I was good enough, they wouldn't have left. If I was good enough, they would have filled in the blank, right? So I guess the number one theme of advice for that one would probably be it's an internal game. It's an internal process of building self-respect in order to feel emotionally regulated. Let's see. It's a little hard for me to keep up the chat. I'm not as good as when Amit's here, but I'll do my best. Emmy's, hey, I already got that question. Good job reposting that. V says, I think I'm addicted to pain. Pain became my identity, and my mind is looking for pain stability. Yeah, well, we become addicted to whatever we're used to. You know what I mean? Instability, pain, isolation, running away, whatever. I get it. Recovered borderline says DVT didn't work for me. Talk therapy, healing my trauma helped me recover. Yes, that's the way that I approach it. I coach for this condition. I've worked with over 1,200 of us. Effective talk therapy does increase gray matter in the brain. It does change you. And when you when you do things that are uncomfortable and you win, the anterior mid cingulate cortex grows in size, and thus also so does your will to live, your will to change, and your willpower, right? Which is the three W's that part of the brain is responsible for. So it's entirely the right way to go. Kit Kat said that made sense. Thank you. I've done a lot of research and I'm trying to do better with myself. Good. The more that show up here every day, every day that we're here, you'll get better. All of these get posted on YouTube and Spotify. There's over 200 episodes of this show on YouTube, and we're quickly catching up on Spotify. So, Nicole says, do you find mindfulness helpful? I find mindfulness a part of things, but what is mindfulness? I think that's a term that's loosely thrown around in therapy. Be mindful, be present, tap your leg, press an ice cube to your forehead. But in reality, I think it's much deeper than that. I think it's the cognitive process of walking through your emotions to find the real root causes and distinguish the difference between emotional thinking and logical thinking. Choose more of the logical side so you end up with better results. So yes and no. I guess it depends on how you look at mindfulness. Recovered says, love your content and the fact that you help BPD people heal. You have my support. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I can't do it alone, I'll tell you that. My goal is to get rid of this condition for the face of the planet, but for that to happen, then everybody's got to get better, right? Daisy says, how do you stop caring about the other perspective? Well, I wouldn't not care about it. I would simply add to the perspective that you have. The more perspectives that you gain, the better. So my first perspective when I wasn't in remission and I wasn't better would always be, founded in paranoia or a lack of self. I don't feel good enough. And that's why, insecurities, all that kind of stuff. So I'd collect other perspectives as well from people that I respect. I would simulate the ideas around me. I'd say, well, what if I did this way? I know that's not what I'm going to do, but what if I did? And I'd start simulating a multitude of futures instead of just the worst case scenario or the best case scenario, because we're very black and white oftentimes. Seeing areas of gray in between is super important. Kim says, do you take medications? Which ones work for you? No, I am not on any medications. I've been in full remission for years with no chance of any type of relapse. I'm not neurotically practicing skills. And that's because I've changed the way that I look at the world. And I didn't have to roll over and give everybody their way in order to achieve that either. Kit Kat says, how do you recommend going about trying to get a diagnosis for BPD? Okay, so we're caught up on all that. Good. Good. And if I miss a question, it's not intentional. It's very difficult to keep up with this entirely by myself here, but I'll do my best. Let's see where I left off. Give me $10,000, I'll heal you for BPD. That's hilarious. That's funny. Yeah, I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars. I did over 4,000 hours of therapy and programs and blah, 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 and some of them very expensive. Um, it's tough when you have this condition, especially when all the mental health professionals out there, a lot of them don't focus on this. I this was the center focus of both of my graduate programs, my master's and my PhD program. It's the topic of my dissertation. I've been writing a book on it for like years. I released a book of which Red mentioned. This isn't the one I've been working on for years. That's more of a comprehensive book. The book I released is very easy read. It's called The 21 Golden Rules for Conquering BPD. It's available on Amazon, 15 bucks. It's the most important 21 rules that I've identified after working with so many of us. Getting out of it will significantly help. So it definitely doesn't cost thousands and thousands. You just have to find the right places with the right people and have the right mentalities. Haley says, sorry for spamming, but Eddies have changed my life. I can actually be my own person now. I'm not exact. Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, everything affects people differently. You know what I mean? I used to have the perspective that I would tone out using something. There's always some substance that I was using to tone out. I believe in the ability, like, I'm not creating an army of sober Sallys, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I believe in the idea of feeling the basic human right of feeling good enough without needing anything, medication or otherwise. Carly says, what's the Spotify? I also don't find any therapy helpful. I had a life coach and he was helpful. I coach for the condition. That's exactly what I do because there's no license to lose. I'm not a mandated reporter. I get to tell you anything. There's a link to the Spotify and also the YouTube and many other useful resources, including an entire resource center with a lot of tools I program available in the link tree on my profile. But if you search sensitive stability on YouTube or thanks to Cole, thank you, Bipolar, Facebook or Instagram or Spotify, we're pretty much everywhere. Okay. So name is sensitive stability or BPD Kevin. My name's Kevin. Good to see you, Rennie. Doing my best to keep up. It always upsets me that there's people that sometimes I don't see the questions. So, feel free to re-ask if I'm not hitting it. It's not because I'm ignoring you. It's just because the thing just, flies with questions, right? Michelle said, I've been told it's my bipolar. How do I differentiate the two? Bipolar is a mood disorder and it can be treated with medicine. BPD is a personality disorder and there is no medicine. Now, I would say this, and this is me really going on a limb here, because a lot of people, this is a controversial topic that many people disagree with me on. Usually the people that disagree with me on it, the topic this morning was getting frozen and creating excuses. People will create excuses as to why they can't take advice because they're comfortable where they are. So one of the excuses is, well, this isn't BPD, this is my bipolar, or this is my autism, or this is my ADHD, because they think that I can't help them with that part so that they can keep doing the same behavior. You know what I mean? Everything can be corrected with cognitive changes, with perspective changes, everything. And I have had all of these other diagnoses as well, right? So, and I've seen some of the worst cases of these diagnoses. I don't just work with people with BPD. I've worked with people with schizophrenia, autism, bipolar, narcissism, you name it. I've worked with them and I've watched them all have the ability to improve and change their perspectives. I think it's different how you approach each one. Do I believe you could have bipolar and BPD? Yes. But often what I say is BPD is kind of at the top of the tower, the top of the pyramid, right up here. And if you take it off, all the other diagnoses sort of collapse and disintegrate. And that's because a lot of them, I believe, they are coping mechanisms that are created by the BPD in order to survive, if that makes sense. Kit Kat says, this makes me feel not so alone. I'm glad to hear that. I programmed this buddy program. If you haven't seen it, it's in the resource center. So you go to sensitivestability.com or you can click on the link tree and there's a link to the resource center. And it's entirely free. It's meant to link you up with someone else who suffers from this or another partner, if you're a partner, or another parent, if you're a parent. You can kind of pick who you want to match with, and then it's anonymous until you wave at each other. And then, the contact details are released. So there's a lot of other free things in there too, meant specifically to help as many people as possible. You know what I mean? It's not easy. That's for sure. And it's easier when you have people that you can rely on. Buzz the Roach says, how do you convince a narcissist to seek help or therapy? You can't. You cannot convince them to do it. You could set the example. You can set the boundaries. You can only do what you can do with your own two hands. We can't force them into it, and even if you did, they would not be likely to take. But one of the easiest ways for them to see it is to step back and allow them to be on center stage by themselves, if you will. The problem with that is if you're attached to a narcissist or even a BPD person, you would have to kind of risk the relationship almost to do that. You would have to step back and say, I'm not going to reward the bad behavior, which is called enabling, right? That's what enabling means, rewarding the bad behavior. But when you do that, you risk them going somewhere else to get the reward from someone else who could be pushed over for that. People with BPD and NPD are going to hate these words, but it's the truth. And I would challenge you, if you have these conditions, to think to yourself, is it working for me? It's not. I mean, it's not working. You know what I'm saying? This is how we lose people. People get sick of us, and it's easier to blame them or to put it on them. Thank you, Michelle. Ashley says, recently diagnosed AUDHD, so autism, ADHD, general anxiety disorder, PTSD, and BPD. Where do I start? Well, I would say that there's superpowers in all of these, Ashley. They're not all bad. These conditions that make us neurodivergent also make us kind of superheroes in disguise. We just haven't tapped into it yet. And one of the answers is finding the pluses behind each one of these conditions. And, exploiting it to get better. So if you don't know where to start, I would suggest going to the resource center. It's on the website. There's a link in the profile. Maybe take the comprehensive self-assessment. It's free, takes about 5 minutes, and send me the results of that. Shoot me an email and show me the results of that. And I'll know what to say to you to get us going to where I can point you in the right direction. I do personally respond to all my emails, and that goes for anybody. Please feel free to reach out. Alexia says, both my parents have mental illnesses that gave me my trauma, and, my genetics are cooked. Most of us are in that boat. It's very rare that we just develop this out of nowhere. Either it's genetic, or it's environmental, or it's a combination of both, And that environmental factor often involves your parents. You know what I mean? And it's not their responsibility to identify with their own illness in order for you to get better, right? So it's the whole thing I always say. It's not my fault that my father was an alcoholic, but it's damn sure my responsibility to build the life I want to live. So we look past that. And like I said, there's a lot of superpowers with these conditions. And if you take the time to fully understand what you've been blessed with, life gets a whole lot better, okay? So don't give up. Damn it, man. I really wish I had a little bit better control over this chat. Here we go. V said, how to develop stable identity or get used to not having one, so I don't break down so much. Well, I would say that you have gotten used to how things are, probably to some extent. We only do things that benefit us, right? Now, how to get the stable identity? I like that question because you're recognizing that maybe the identity hasn't fully formed, and that's part of the problem. Why is it part of the problem? Because it means that we will attach to things in order to pull identity from those things, be it people, places, ideas, organizations, you know what I'm saying? Which is a dangerous way to live, because if you're outsourcing how you feel into another person, even if they have a slightly bad day, you're going to feel like crap. If you're outsourcing yourself into some type of job or political party, you're always going to be needing to give to get back, to feel whole. So the identity crisis that is BPD is resolved through your cognitive realization that there's a difference between identity traits and labels. For example, you are not a firefighter. That's a label. That's a job. You are a hero. That's a personality trait. Somebody willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good and to save people. That's a hero. You see? You are not we'll say a teacher is a very interesting one. A teacher is a job. but they're also someone who teaches. Do you see what I'm saying? And you could be someone who is a teacher of some aspect of life, while the job is a job. And the same, you are not a so-and-so's husband or so-and-so's girlfriend or whatever, right? That's not your identity. That's a label. But you could be somebody who's a good provider and who has passion and empathy, and those types of things. This is what forms identity traits. And they all start out as habits and things that you do just one time and then you stick with. Justin says, if you don't enable and let it go, they do not stop till they get what they want. That statement tells me that we haven't set proper boundaries, because you have to be willing to step away. You have to be willing to look out for yourself. It's not as simple as just not enabling. You also can't get abused. You can't get used. You can't let people control you or manipulate you. And people with this condition really hate to hear that. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't want to believe that we are actually controlling or manipulating people. That's not like what we want. It's just what happens to happen. And it's because there's no other answer in our minds, but that's also because we don't get challenged appropriately. We curate a world around us. It's not anyone else's fault, but we curate the world around us and train the people around us to treat us certain ways, to respond in certain ways. And because of that, it's very hard for the outside world not to enable. They don't even see it half the time. But you are right that we will change our behavior. If the first thing doesn't work, we'll graduate to the next thing. We'll evolve to the next thing until something works. And if it doesn't, then we are in a position where we might be able to grow, to find something else. But there's always a way to get what you want, usually, or very close to it, without trampling over yourself or someone else. Ashley says, I want to be a superhero. Well, you are a superhero if you have the condition. I believe that already. I think we were put here for a reason, but tapping into it. I mean, I often compare it to Spider-Man. He gets bit by the spider, wakes up the next day, super scared, shooting webs all over the room. It's freaking him out, goes to school, super strong, beats the bully up at school, and everybody's scared of him, of course, right? But he beat the bully up. Sound familiar, We're like the anti-hero, the villain that, like, people want around when the real villain shows up. And then anyway, his uncle's passed away in the street, as I always say. The 2003 Tobey Maguire Spider-Man is the only real one. And if you know, right? And what does the uncle say to him? He says, with great power comes great responsibility. Then he becomes Spider-Man. You have these blessings with this condition, but we use them incorrectly before we get better. We wallow in victim mode, for example, a lot of the times, which doesn't actually get us what we want long term. It comes at the sacrifice of our reputation and our rapport and our self-respect, how we feel about ourselves. It's totally true. Kit Kat said all you guys were so sweet and welcoming. I'm glad to hear that. The chat here is quite amazing. That is the truth. That is the truth. And I heard that there's some daylight savings time going on over in Australia, I think, right now, presently. V says, how to develop stable identity. All right, we got that one. Good. Okay, let's keep going. Kiwi says, I have BPD, but I struggle with upholding my own boundaries from others. Any tips? Boundaries are things that you set and enforce. They are not things that you set and expect people to follow. So this would mean if you're having trouble following through, then I guess it would mean that you don't have enough worth in your own opinions, your own core values. That's one of the reasons that we right fight a lot of the time. If we're trying to beat somebody into submission mentally and convince them that we're correct, a lot of the times it's because we don't have enough self-worth in our own opinion. Thank you, Jim. To be okay and comfortable with the fact that somebody disagrees with us. If my wife comes up to me and says, you're wrong about this, it shouldn't send me into a spiral. Thank you, Miranda. I should be able to say, okay, you disagree. We can talk about that later, or this is why I believe this. Does that make sense? I don't have to beat her into submission into agreeing with me. I could say, well, this person disagrees and that's okay. And I have my opinion and they have theirs. But this idea that our boundaries sound reasonable to us, thus people must follow them, that's a recipe for disaster because we cannot force them. Do you see what I mean? We cannot force them to follow us, right? We just have to enforce the boundaries that we set. Kit Kat says, I self-isolate a lot and I'm working on not doing that. Well, the question would be why? Why is it more comfortable to self-isolate? People only do things that benefit them. You're getting a benefit out of that behavior, whether you realize it or not. And the question is why? Why is this better than the alternative? Some of the stuff that we do, we know is wrong. We know it's not the right choice, but we do it anyway. Why do we do that? It's because it's better than the alternative. And if you know it's wrong, then that tells you there's something that you don't understand about the alternative or about the choice that you know is wrong. Something isn't being measured, whether it's the long-term situation. Appreciate you. Thank you, man. Or the past, or what they think, the other person's perspective. And I think that we run from the fears, and the fears are very hard to see sometimes. I'll tell you that. Very hard to see. And again, if I miss anything, it's not intentional. Sherry says, I file through just fine. I follow through just fine. It's the sadness that is reality when we can only insist upon our own actions. You know, yes, everything comes at a cost too, right? So the cost of doing things right sometimes, it might be discomfort. It might be sadness. It might be grieving. It might be risking a relationship. If somebody's abusing me in a relationship, for instance, and I love them still, I still have to set a boundary that risks the relationship. There's a reason why I've been doing things the way I've been doing them up until then. It's because I'm scared of them leaving. So I cave and I enable it because I want them to stay, right? So, but that comes at the cost of my own self-respect and my own dignity, which is long-term not sustainable. So a lot of the times when boundaries aren't being followed or they are and they hurt, it's all a measure and a comparison of short-term instant gratification or long-term self-respect. You're weighing these two things as a person at all moments, whether you realize it or not. And then you make decisions that you feel you can pay for. And sometimes you make decisions that you know are bad because you don't feel you can pay the price of risking the relationship because you can't control them, right? You can only control yourself. So it's scary to set a boundary and enforce it. It's painful. And then you go through a grieving process too, because we get trapped in cycles and there's the trauma bond. There's a lot of things that go on in a relationship when cluster B is involved, whether you're the one that has it or they're the one that has it or both of you have it, it's irrelevant. If it's involved at all, there's a lot of mechanisms that get hidden that are under the surface. Kiwi says, that's true. I don't trust my own opinion or myself and end up looking to others for help. I get it. I was so bad with that before I was better that when I noticed, I absolutely noticed that all my decisions were going poorly for me. I finally got to a place where I said, well, I know that if I listen to these people, my friends or my family, that I would be doing better because their decisions are the right choice. They were just scary. I would literally call friends and be like, all right, look, here's the deal. Tell me what to do and I will do it. Whatever you say. Because I knew they'd tell me the right thing, and then I did it under the premise that they were the ones that were guiding me. I gave up all control over myself at some points because that's how poorly I was driving the boat. That's how poorly I was steering the ship. You know what I mean? And then I found getting better that a lot of times all the things I had to do were completely opposite of the things that I felt innately naturally drawn to doing, which made it terrible. It made it a horrible process because every single part of getting better here was scary as hell. There was a fear behind every corner, behind every door. Thank you, Vitality. It's very difficult to beat this, but if I could do it, I guarantee you could do it. Good morning, Rolling Girl. Girl says, how can I respect someone's time and space without feeling abandoned or rejected? That is an internal problem, believe it or not. Rolling Girl, it actually has nothing to do with them as much as you might think. Judge Judy, is not an answer. So when you feel hypersensitive to rejection or abandonment, it tells you that you're missing pieces of yourself that you were supposed to maybe get in childhood, let's say, right? Usually that's the case. And you didn't get them correctly. And it's not your fault that this happened, but you develop rituals, mechanisms for survival that ensure that you get a steady stream that will fill those missing pieces of your pie. As inappropriate and unsustainable as it is, it's the only thing you know, so you do it, right? Now, the hypersensitivity to rejection means that we are outsourcing stuff that we should have into our partner or into our friend or into the people that we're hyper vigilant about losing. They can sense this. They have to carry the weight of how they feel as a person. And then they also have to carry the weight of how you feel as a person, which is oftentimes why they need space and time, because it's too heavy. They can't carry that. It's impossible. It's not possible for another person to carry how you feel about yourself and for that relationship to long-term survive. And you can't mistake it because we'll often say, but I give them. Yes, but you give to get before remission. Thank you, Red. You give to fill those spaces. If I do these things, then they'll tell me I'm great. They'll tell me that they love me. They'll tell me they'll never leave. They'll tell me all these good things about me and I'll be good enough. They will never make you good enough. They can't do it. It's not because they don't love you. It's not because they don't care. It's because you're the only one who can achieve that self-validation. That's why it's called self-validation, right? You keep showing up here, you'll learn it. Stay Long says, I ruminate about the past so much, it's self-destruction at the worst, working on mindfulness. Rumination is one of the big triggers for us, thinking about the past, usually from a negative perspective. There are certain things that we do that keep us from getting better. Everything is a scale, right? Usually when you're ruminating about the past, you're using it to determine how you feel or what you should do in the future, okay? There's a certain amount of the past that's totally reasonable to focus on. So one of the rules in 21 Golden Rules for Conquering BPD, this book that I released on Amazon recently, I will read to you. It is rule number 2, and this might help you, might help a lot of people here. View your past like it's someone else's story. People with BPD often get stuck in cycles of focusing on the past, which prevents them from dealing with the present. That's why you mentioned mindfulness, right? Good for you. This rumination can monopolize your mental energy. While reflecting on past experiences can be productive for avoiding mistakes, dwelling on them with self-loathing is unproductive. It's essential to make peace with the past to move forward. Making peace with the past can be a complicated process depending upon the circumstances. Revisiting past scenarios will place a burden on the amygdala, a part of the brain responsible for managing emotional content. Understanding the triggers of the past circumstances to better comprehend the emotional content can help reveal the triggers which are having such a significant impact on the amygdala and give you a chance to better negotiate the meaning of these memories. Remember, not all memories are created or stored equally. Some memories will harbor a deeper bruise, a heavier weight, and/or more present-day influence. For this reason, it is important to practice reviewing memories without emotional content, as this will provide the most significant advantage today. A great way to implement this strategy would be to view your past as though it was someone else's story, not your own. Reading a story which does not belong to you makes it easier, far easier, to criticize and extract meaningful lessons, okay? So the point being, that problem with rumination is corrupting how you feel about yourself, but you are not your past. You are not the past. You can't go back and change it. It's literally gone. And the only way it exists is the emotional memory that has been burned into your brain, of which the amygdala doesn't know the difference. When you look at the past, for example, right? And you're truly present in the moment. You could do it with good memories or bad memories, but we often do it with all the bad memories. The amygdala fires as though it's happening in present day. This impacts how you feel about yourself. You see what I'm saying? None of it's easy, you know. None of these situations are easy to get through. And I know that you can get trapped, which is why I often say that we only do things that benefit us. I say that because I want you to understand that some of the stuff that you're complaining about, like rumination, you're doing it because it's benefiting you to some extent to do that. Either you get to stay a victim, which means you don't have to do anything challenging and scary because all these bad things happen to me and they always will. What's the point? Why even try? Why should I do anything different? Look at how my life's gone. Look at how bad it is. Look at how many people left me. Why should I develop another relationship? Why should I try any harder? Why should I do this differently or do that differently or make this sacrifice or get out of bed or get a job or go to work or, you know, be responsible or accountable for some of these things or drop the substances, what's the point? Was always a loser, always be a loser. If you think like that, you'll stay like that. But the benefit of you doing these things is that you don't have to do the hard labor to change the stuff. That's scary. That's why we're avoiding that stuff, right? Part of the benefit of staying where you are is that you get to avoid the fears. You're picking the lesser of two evils in your own mind, even if you know it's the bigger evil. That's tough. I get it. Someone had asked if I know about Quiet BPD. Yes, indeed. There's a playlist that I've released recently called BPD Features and Patterns. It's on my TikTok here. If you click on the profile and you scroll left and right through the playlists under the email button, you'll find that one. And also BPD Subtypes is a good one to check out. They'll give you kind of some general idea what's going on, you know. This manifests a lot of different ways. Let's see. Looking for another question here. Good for you, Jinx. Recovery is what we're all looking at, you know. Glad to see you here recovered. I appreciate you. Or something like, all right. Justin said, favorite person, or are you the one who is toxic? You know, the favorite person complex in general is often considered unhealthy. And the reason being, because that's the definition of heavy outsourcing. So this person becomes so important to how I feel about me. And it's just, when I say inappropriate, I'm not saying it to make people feel bad. What I'm saying is, if you are a stock, this is how I usually explain it. You probably heard me explain it this way before, Justin. If you are a stock like Microsoft or something, you can't give away more than 51% of your own stock. If you do, then more than 50% of you, it changes how you feel about yourself too rapidly based on who has been given the stock. Usually the person that has more of your stock than you do is somebody that you gave it to. They didn't ask for it and they didn't take it. That person might be the favorite person. That's a heavy weight. Being a favorite person can be exciting and fun because, you know, you get a lot out of your BPD person, but it's ultimately unhealthy because you can't reciprocate it. It's impossible because usually the favorite person has enough of their own stock to where they don't feel the same way about it. They don't have to give to you in order to feel better about themselves. But that's how we feel with BPD a lot of the times. I find I like this person so much. You know, my wife was my favorite person. And in terms of like, this is my favorite person. I mean, sure, I could pick a favorite person like her, but I don't overgive to where it's uncomfortable for her because she can't keep up with it. And I don't overgive to the point where I feel resentment, which was the other half of that problem. You know what I'm saying? I'd give so much and I'm like, why don't you ever do these things for me? I remember she'd argue with me about that all the time. Yeah, I do things for you, she'd say. And I'm like what? I'd make her list all the stuff she did for me. And it was never as much as I was doing for her. One day she looked at me and she said, stop giving me so much. Stop doing all this stuff. You know, and that pissed me off. I was like, so your answer to me telling you that you have been a bad wife, which she hadn't been, I just was asking for too much, is that I should be a worse husband. I was pissed, you know? And then I got it one day. I realized that, no, she was basically saying, I can't keep up. It's impossible. Nobody can, right? And that you need to be able to fill some of your own boat. And if you don't fill some of your own, you know, pieces of the pie that are missing, it's not sustainable. You see what I mean? It's tough. It's tough, man. And yeah, like Justin says, favorite person kind of ends up like a parent, like a mother or caretaker for the BPD. They become so hyper responsible for like how you feel. I like how you phrase that, Justin. They become so hyper responsible for you that they lose themselves. They start to lose their identity. They start to walk on eggshells. They can't share their opinion. They have to make sure that they pay you, you know, attention that goes far beyond social norm. Things that you should be providing yourself become their responsibility. That's why it breaks. Tracy says expectations can play out in our head too. Yes, you know, focusing on the future is just as tough sometimes as focusing on the past. As human beings, we are simulators. We simulate futures. That's what we do. We'll think of all these different scenarios. But if you have BPD and you don't have that center of self put together, then you might be prone to only simulating futures and not having any type of weight in your own opinion, any type of respect for yourself, any type of confidence to say, okay, I've thought about the best case, I've thought about the worst case. That's enough thinking. I'm going to lean now with action towards the better option, which is what I try to teach people to do. That is why I programmed the flowchart tool that's in the resource center. It's to help you retrain your brain to understanding how to properly simulate and form a scale so you're not so black and white thinking. It's either all or nothing, and that you have the ability to change your perspectives to get better outcomes. So check that out for sure. Vitality said favorite person is an excessive relationship, one-sided. That is kind of that's another good way of phrasing it. Correct. I agree with that. Let's see. Something I missed here. Maria said I try that and he still overgives. That sounds like a boundary issue, or Maria, well, you'll have to set a boundary and enforce it. Okay. Um, Meaning you'll have to risk some of how he's going to respond and feel, right? Because he's not going to be happy when you reject some of the giving or you establish a boundary that allows him not to be able to get what he wants out of it. It's going to suck a little bit, but that's the only way that you could challenge him to see in himself on that one and maintain yourself. Mary, good morning, Mary. Can you have a favorite person like 1 to 2 times after you met? Yes, you could form a favorite person that you haven't even met. Some people have favorite people that are celebrities or, preachers or pastors at church or teachers that they have, no real interaction with. Public figures, all sorts of things. You could have more than one favorite person too, depending upon circumstances. Raina says, how to give ourselves the unmet needs from childhood and adulthood. First, you have to understand what the fear is in the way of you giving it to yourself, like what you're actually scared of. Are you scared of being alone? Are you scared of being judged? Are you scared of being criticized? Are you scared of, being unimportant? Are you scared of future things happening that haven't happened yet? Or are you scared of the past repeating itself? Do you have hypersensitivity to disrespect, or feeling unheard or feeling unappreciated? We have to get to the bottom of what the things are that are preventing us from even exploring alternative behavior. And that would be the first step. Raina, I would send you to the resource center. Click my profile, click the link tree, click the resource center, or go to sensitivestability.com. Click the menu, click the resource center, and look for this IES symptom map generator. This is meant to give you an idea of how the condition has manifested for you. It takes about 3 to 5 minutes. It's free. It'll put your entire condition on one sheet of paper, and it serves as a roadmap of things that could be addressed, right, to get you where you need to be faster. Thanks for all the help, guys. Thank you, Red. Appreciate all of the regulars helping out with some of these questions for me. ESM says, why do people with BPD sometimes attract very manipulative, narcissistic people? Because the narcissist takes to get and the BPD person gives to get. So we will give because we think if this person finally loves us the way that we need to feel it, then we'll be good enough. And they take because they need people to tell them that they're the best and that they're great and to give to them in order to feel whole. Jess says a healthcare provider became my favorite person, and it was so hard when treatment ended. Yes, that is a thing. Like this week has been rough, and last week has been rough for me to show up to the lives. I've gotten a lot of messages from people who are worried about me not coming back. I won't do the show forever, probably. Just a heads up. We have been doing it for years, though. Like I said, appreciate you. There's over 200 episodes on YouTube. I won't be here tomorrow, but then I will be here Thursday, Friday, and then we should be resuming Monday forward next week as normal. But I get it. I totally get it. I have had mental health professionals become my favorite person as well. And then it becomes about pleasing them and having them like you, which doesn't get you better because then you're telling them what they want to hear instead of actually exploring the stuff, right? It's a tough world. Meg says, my boyfriend split on me about 6 weeks ago and I haven't heard from him since. I suppose. Damn it, TikTok. I suppose I should let him go. I have fat fingers that just can't click this little arrow. Whether you let him go or not, you're still going to have to make peace with stuff, right? And I would say that most people with BPD come back at some point or another. Sometimes it is permanent, a permanent split, but that's pretty rare. Thank you, Pashot. I'd expect to hear from him at some point. The question is what will you do when you hear from him? Because nothing changes if nothing changes. And as you can probably relate, I would guess, Meg, maybe maybe not, but most of us probably can. They'll say whatever to try and get back in, right? They'll make promises. I did. I was like, babe, I'm never going to do this again. And I remember one day I was saying that after a massive episode the next morning to my ex-wife. I'm like, I promise this is never going to happen again. And in my head, I remember thinking, why are you saying that? Why are you lying to her? You know that you can't keep it together. You know you don't have control. Why are you lying? It's because I knew she had enough and that her ass was out of here if it happened again, right? But I lied anyway. And then I had another, conversation in my head where I'm like, just keep the lie because maybe you can make it 2 weeks. And then I barely made it like 2 weeks white knuckling it before I then again destroy my house again. You know what I mean? Uh, it's a complicated process, but if I were to have focused more on what I was actually afraid of, real insecurities, instead of just saying, okay, so I got to trust her without understanding why I didn't trust her. I was just trying to force trust. I wasn't investigating it. I was trying to force behaving correctly. I was trying to force listening to her, not asking myself why it was so hard not to listen, why it was so hard not to hear certain things, why it was so hard not to say certain things or do certain things or go certain places. Why? Why are you having such a hard time with it and everybody else, they're fine with it? What are you afraid of that's keeping you where you are? Jess said I ordered the book. I appreciate that. The book that they're referring to is 21 Golden Rules for Conquering BPD. It's on Amazon. I've gotten a lot of really good feedback from it. Like I've been saying, I've been writing this it's the biggest book on BPD that'll on the face of the planet, right? But it's taking forever. It's taken forever to put this together, and every time I think I'm done, there's a few more chapters I know I need to add. But not everybody likes to read, and this book is more of a handbook. It's super simple, and all the rules are simplified in a way, if you listen to them, it'll massively improve your life. Please do leave a review if you like the book. The reviews are the biggest way to help us with the mission here of getting people better, whether it's a review on Spotify or Facebook or, the book. We appreciate it. KG says, what was that resource? Sorry, I could do with the roadmap. It is called the IES Symptom Map Generator. So if you go to the website, sensitivestability.com, or the resource center is on the website, you'd click the menu and just go to the resource center, or there's a link to it directly here on TikTok in the link tree. It's called Resource Center. You'll find it, and you'll find a bunch of other free things that you can do too. It was very hard to get that program up. Originally in the coaching program, I run a program called the BPD Remission Program. And after I've worked with you for a few weeks in the program, I used to draw the map by hand for you as I see it. This was very laborious. It took about a half an hour to draw each one out, and my handwriting sucked. So it was very hard to read. So I created a program to make it neater that I could do on the computer and then send you the picture. And I'm like, we need to be doing this more often. They should be able to redo their map as we go, and they should be able to do it as well, not just me. So I made it public and I made it free and I put it on the internet. Took a while to get it up there, but we got it. And ESM said I live in Europe and they're not very educated on BPD. I think they even call it EUPD over there more than they do BPD, which is emotionally unstable personality disorder. I've heard that many times. I've worked with a lot of people from Europe. I work with people all around the world, from Australia to Dubai, South America, everywhere, right? And I'll tell you one thing, it's not much better anywhere else. That's the truth. It wasn't better here in America. I did over 4,000 hours of therapy, and let me tell you what, if there was somebody out there that could have saved me, I would have been saved, because I was trying, man. I was trying, and I couldn't find anybody who could do that for me, which is why I do what I do now. I thought maybe I could be the person for other people who are suffering like this that wasn't there for me. And I like doing what I do. Thank you, Pasha. I greatly enjoy working with us. You can get better. And not only can you get better, but you can get so much better that there's no relapse risk or anything like that. There's not a single thing in this world that will cause me to go back to that type of behavior. I will never exhibit that type of behavior again. And it's because I see that it is counterproductive for me getting what it is that I want, which is respect, rapport, love, care, you know, feeling good about myself, making an impact on the world, maintaining relationships, keeping friends, helping other people, feeling like a good person, providing for my family, remaining stable, not looking like a loose cannon, being reliable, being a cool-headed problem solver. Those are the things I want. And none of the things that I was doing was getting me what I wanted. And that's the first thing you really have to admit. And it's a hard thing, you know? Thanks, Pasha. Did great without Amit today. Yeah, I know, right? Amit's here now. But it's all good though. Look, Amit and I have had we've had a lot of personal stuff over the last week and a half that we've been doing, and I helped my parents move last week, and over the weekend, drained the hell out of me, man. Drained the hell out of me. It was so bad I had to call Amit and have him shoot over and help help with it. Drain him too. It's been a rough last couple weeks, but we are excited to get back on track here in a way that's permanent. So a quick reminder that I will not be in tomorrow. So we are, either we're probably going to skip tomorrow's live is the idea. And then we'll pick back up Thursday. So Thursday, Friday, and then next week we should be back to normal. And it's necessary. It's not something that can be avoided. So I do apologize for that, because I'll tell you what, I love doing the lives. This is the place to be in the morning for me. I feel good about it. I feel good being here every day. I like what we talk about. I like helping people get through this. I like the community. I think everybody here has the right mission. We have a great group of people who are all on the same mission here to get better, to make the world a better place, to improve our lives. And I think that it's good energy. So we'll be, back and sustainable as soon as we can be. In the meantime, though, I do want to remind you that there are over 200 episodes on YouTube, and Spotify has probably well over 100 at this point. So if you, want to try to figure out what it is you're suffering from the most right now, and you kind of use Spotify or YouTube as a search engine, you go to YouTube and you type in fear of abandonment, sensitive stability, or codependence, sensitive stability, or whatever it may be, you're probably going to find a show on it. And that's probably a pretty good time to do it, is on a day that we take off. I've always been a fan of AM radio. I used to like, call me a nut if you want, but I really like the Coast to Coast show where they talk about all the cool paranormal stuff. I always found that the conspiracy stuff very entertaining. And sometimes they'd have to take off, and I was always kind of bummed out. They aired a show that had been previously played. And that just goes to show you, even the biggest faces in radio, even the biggest shows, sometimes they need time off, it's just how it is. And it's for your advantage. You know what I mean? Last night, I think I got the first REM sleep I've gotten in over like a year and a half. I do 24/7 tech support with the programs that I run, with a 1 to 3 hour average response time in general. Once or twice a year, I'll get to sleep a little longer, I feel recharged. I gotta say, I feel anew right now, which is good. Tells me I can go the next year. You know what I mean? Thank you, Sherry. I appreciate you. I do need more sleep, but I'm in the trenches and I'm going to war with this condition. And, you just, sometimes when you're at war and you're in the trenches and you're the front line, you got to skip sleep and stuff like that. That's just how it is. So that's what we do. And that's what gets people better fastest. That said, I won't be coaching forever. The idea is sometime end of spring, early summer, I'm going to be moving into training doctors and therapists with what I do, right? So that brings me to my last point here. As we are approaching the end of the live, we are still offering our 35% off of all of our programs right now. We had a bunch of people a very high amount of people hit remission in a very short time, usually about 1 to 3 hit remission in our program on a weekly basis. We had so many hit remission over the last month, and it's still happening, that we decided to offer a discount on the program to try and refill the slots, which we're still doing. So if you would like to consider getting better, if you would like to consider learning how to get out of this, if you would like to consider doing something like the BPD remission program or the BPD partner support program that we offer for the support system, now's the time to reach out while the slots are available. Just shoot me an email, say hello, tell me a little bit about the story, and I'll know what to say to you. That said, guys, it's an honor. It's a privilege. It's a pleasure. I will be back on Thursday, and then we'll pick up from normal there. I hope you all have a fabulous day today, a wonderful day tomorrow. As Castleberry says, have a great day, everyone, and remember to be kind to yourself. You got to put yourself on that list of people you care about. I know you haven't been doing it, but this is a good time to start. Have a good one. I'll see you all soon.